towards the future. Now everybody is going to get out of this in one way or the other, whether we like it or not. We are going to face something, and that something might be quite a different thing from what we had before. So in this context, how are we going to use our knowledge of yoga, our practice of yoga, and what is it that we can contribute to creating a new society? What is this foundation stone that we have, right? How can we make it valid? How can we create something very not only constructive but also overall considered to be alternative lifestyle yoga? Especially in modern India, I don't know how much okay, yoga kar rahe the, but today suddenly it's been going to the world after this International Yoga Day has been created. There is definitely a hike in this whole noise and publicity about yoga, for good or for bad, whatever. So when schools like you, who are the founding fathers, the stones, the I would say the pillars of authenticity in yoga, what would you foresee? What is the contribution that you could bring, and how would you tell? Because our audience here is to give you the background is Kanpur University is hosting this, and they are wanting to take this to Doordarshan so that not only the 4.5 lakh students that they have on their 15 campuses, which are across 15 districts of Uttar Pradesh, but also how we can reach out. So we are going to have a large audience with DD Sports. So what is it that the Iyengar School of Yoga has been standing for? What is it that your message would be tomorrow? Where yoga is seen as a sport, yoga is seen as a fitness exercise, there is so much more to it. What did our ancient sages, and what are the things that Iyengarji himself would have said about the future in a space like this? So let us speculate on that. Free flow, whatever you feel like.
Okay.
Hindi, English, both would work. Whatever you can mix and match also. Jo bhi man mein aaye, whatever you feel like.
The tendency is to speak in English, but if there's a little, maybe the Q&A, if you put it in Hindi, I will try and respond in Hindi. But
naturally,
spontaneously, you've just been used to conversing in English.
Absolutely. Let's keep it very free-flowing, and that is it for me.
Okay.
Yeah. Please start off with your first address and then we take it.
Okay, so, well, actually, I would like to start with saying it's the International Day of Yoga tomorrow, and we're celebrating it worldwide. It's there are many days, many days, many dates of the year are attributed to different events or societies or activities, but there are a few which are, spread worldwide, and International Day of Yoga is one of that, which is really acknowledged and celebrated. So being a student of yoga, I would first like to start by expressing my gratitude to my guru. So I would like to start with reciting the Guru Vandana. So I have the blessings. So I will start. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurur Sakshat Parar Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hari Om. To start with, I would like to greet all my fellow practitioners on this International Day of Yoga. It's a day of celebration. Also, it's a day for us to share what we have been experiencing, learning with people across the world. As a practitioner of yoga, I think each day is the day of yoga, because yoga, for a practitioner, yoga is so much a part of your life that you do not need one day to remember it. For example, if we talk of Mother's Day and Father's Day, in our culture, we never had this kind of system, because you don't need to remember your parents only on one day. You remember them all the time they are with you. So, so be it. However, there are many, many people across the world who may not have had an opportunity, may not be blessed enough or an occasion to get exposed to yoga. So this International Day of Yoga has brought a lot of people to know about our ancient culture, our ancient science, our ancient philosophy. And there are also, because of the practices, and all of us go all out to do events, classes. All these years we did practical sessions. This year we're doing online sessions, all people across the world. So I feel this is a time for those who are the fence sitters, who have heard about yoga but have not had the drive to actually get into yoga, to to experience it. Possibly this day gives them an opportunity. So I think it's a great time for everybody to get a feel of it. However, a day, a year, a lifetime is not enough to really understand the subject of yoga, but we always need to start. So this is the start. uh, well, I would say Guruji BK Iyengar started yoga when it was not popular. He started it and he practiced it, and there was such a transformation in him, and that transformation actually he managed to pass it on to millions across the world. So when yoga was taken to the West in the 1950s, people had no clue about what yoga is, and India was not what it is today. It was not a respected country, I would say. And if you're going to UK or Europe, it was like, especially UK, we had just gained independence. So coming from that situation, I mean, we all look down at our own culture. Even for a long period of time, if a person spoke in English, was educated, but agar humne Hindi mein baat ki, to as if you're vernacular. So we had a lot of this, I would say, the leftovers of colonial legacy. In that point of time, Guruji took yoga there. He actually got not only all people from all walks of life to experience it. He started it for people. What is the most important to all of us is health, aches and pains, the condition. So when people, he started off from that phase, and there was such a transformation that people started understanding the real essence of yoga. So today it is quite amusing when a few years back, when people talk of religion and yoga, and certain religions do not practice yoga, uh, it's quite amazing. It is quite amusing also to me, because Guruji has taught people of all religious backgrounds, and he said that the practice of yoga increases your religiosity. It helps us understand our religion better. So it is absolutely nothing to do with religion. There are maybe small incidences, but what do we report? Incidences. We don't report what is happening all the time. What is reported is when something spikes up. Today we report so much of COVID. Are we reporting as much about tuberculosis? Because it's been there constant. So similarly, when there's a spike of a religious issue coming up, you say, oh, yoga and religion. Guru has taught people of all religious backgrounds. In fact, people of all religious backgrounds practice the Guruji's tradition. I mean, to give you an example, I had taught a session in Jordan. That was my first visit. I had no idea much idea about the culture. And well, after the class, the lady who was a Muslim, actually Arab woman, asked me to leave the mat behind, and she actually went and did her namaz on the yoga mat. So what are we talking about? We have taught in Dubai to a Saudi families where they had a yoga hall, and I would recite the invocation because it gives me the strength and the blessings to start teaching. But they were the ones who were reciting the invocation. They were the ones who wanted to know the meaning of the sutras. So, we generally talk about the negativities, there's a problem here, these people, but in reality, yoga is far beyond. And the way Guruji started it, people could not see any reason for people to object. So I would say, in a way, Guruji has been a karma yogi, because 2014 August, he passed away. We had Prime Minister, I remember in an interview to NDTV with Shekhar Gupta, when he got the Padma Vibhushan in sometime in April. And in an interview to Shekhar Gupta, he was asked, Guruji, you have voted. What do you think if Mr. Narendra Modi becomes the Prime Minister? He said, yes, he'll do good for the country if he comes in. That was a very statement that he had made. And after August 2014, after he passed away, the UN came in October, and then yoga became global. But let's face it, is it just because India, the Prime Minister of India suggested to the UN General Assembly that let's make International Yoga Day, that everybody agreed? No, of course, they agreed because they were all aware of the practices of yoga in different parts of the world. People knew what it is, there was an acceptance, and therefore people immediately accepted it when our Prime Minister suggested it. So, and it is of course all the background work that was done by many people, and Guruji has been a very prominent one in that. So, like a karma yogi, he left his body, and yoga has been spreading. So, as of now, I feel that today yoga has become very popular, and anything comes under the garb of yoga. So, if you move your arms and legs, you call it yoga because it's popular. You see advertisements selling shoes, selling clothes, selling anything which has nothing to do with yoga. You put the name yoga because it sells. So, as practitioners, we need to be careful that we don't get carried away in this flow and forget the true essence of yoga. So yes, when we want to make things popular, you want everybody to do it, we dilute it so that it is accessible. So if yoga was kept as at the way the yogis, supposedly ancient yogis, practiced, and if we brought that down, the common man would never have been able to gain benefit from it. So it was brought down to their level, but then one has to raise their level. You don't bring a subject down and leave it down. You take it to their level. So if you're teaching children, a subject, you say, okay, you introduce them a subject with alphabets, stories, but later that child evolves. So you need to evolve in that subject. So it's very important that while we are working on the popularity of yoga, the promotion of yoga, we need to also ensure that we don't go down to the least common denominator. There will be people, but those who are interested, we need to see, and as practitioners who will be passing it on to the next generation, we need to see that the pyramid goes upwards, and as they go, their knowledge, their wisdom should rise, and it should not be left at the level of just simple movements, because where it is not even asana, it's just movement. So we start with that, everybody starts with that, but let's start evolving so we understand the physical, physiological, emotional, intellectual, the conscience through the practices. So I think it's very nice that the world has taken to yoga, and now that they have taken, we should now take it like a springboard and move ahead in its practices. And for anybody who practices, yoga is something to give for them. And I would like to give the classic example too, which is to me very, which is connected with me a lot. I started very young, and I happened to read, Menuhin. Lord Menuhin was a very famous violinist of his times and even very recognized today. And Menuhin gifted Guruji a violin, a watch in which he had inscribed to my best violin teacher. I hadn't seen the watch that time. I had heard the story. And I felt, oh, how could have Guruji been his best violin teacher? I was in my teens. And, you have the arrogance of teens when you think you know everything. Saying, oh, no, I'm sure it's a mistake. He must be meaning his best yoga teacher. It's much later that you realize that, the practice of yoga made a maestro like Menuhin actually become better in his own violin playing. So if we practice yoga in its true essence, we become better in whatever we do. So if you're a student, you become a better student. If you're a homemaker, you become a better homemaker. If you're a scientist, artist, whatever you do in your life, whatever profession, because it is going to make us better. It's not that all of us are going to be yogis. Lord Krishna said 1 in million. So we are on the path of yoga. We are not yogis.
What I understand from what you're saying is that yoga is a path to excellence in whatever field we are taking. In the sense, it is the foundation of creating proper focus, creating balance, because and like you also said, that we have to sharpen the saw as we move on. The practice should take higher levels. You have to keep improving yourself.
Yes.
Now, in a country like ours, where students today are so time pressed, right? You're talking about a practice which may take some time. How much time do you suggest one should accord to yoga?
Let's start with 15 minutes. Let students do it twice a week for 1 hour. The moment they do it and they find something, you find time. Time is something which is very stretchable and flexible. It's a concept. So if I like doing something, I find time for it. If I'm getting something out of it, I find time for it. If I feel it's making a difference to me, I find time for it. So it's not that. So moment you get it, you find. I'll give you a very naive example of children, and people always say children are very busy these days, especially in urban cities. They have so many activities running from, say talking about a middle class or an upper middle class, running from classes to classes, etc., etc., etc. We had a demonstration given by 16 young children, 8 to 14-year-old, on Guruji's 90th birthday in 2008. During the lockdown, I tried to see whether we could connect where these kids were. You know, they were 7 years old to 15 or 16. And thanks to social media, it's easy to track people down. We found that 12 of them, after 12 years, have still been practicing. And none of them had the intention of becoming a yoga teacher or doing so. There are people studying economics, there are people studying films, there are people doing actuarial sciences, they're doing life sciences, name it. And they're studied in different parts of the world. So it wasn't that they were forced to go to class, their practice continued. And this is just an example, and that is true for thousands of people across the world. So I think we should promote yoga as yoga for yourself. And who doesn't want to become better? Who doesn't want to become better in whatever they are doing? Even if they're not interested in the path of yoga, if yoga is used to help you, who doesn't want it? So rather than, I would suggest that promoting yoga as a profession or a vocation, well, by the by, people can get into that. There's no harm in that. But only that, then what happens? It's becoming what has happened to our education system.
It is. It has.
You know, you get a degree and then you are pursuing something else. So why should we shouldn't be encouraging those kind of activities. We should encourage people to practice for the sake of practice, to become better human beings. If I become better in whatever I am and I'm enjoying what I'm doing, I'm going to be better to my society, to people around me. So that will make a world a better place.
See, there's one point that you said which is very interesting. Are you telling me that yoga is not a faith-based practice, not a religious practice, but it is a practice for a lifestyle? It is a practice that appears possible for everybody, and yet becoming a better human being is something that religions have always propounded. Any religion today will say that their primary purpose is to make you a better human being, closer to God, right? So there is this fine line that yoga walks, you know, in raising consciousness levels, and yet it is not a faith-based practice. It is a science-based practice. It gives you a very definite, I would say, result, you know, where there is nothing left to chance. If you do certain practices, the results will appear.
Yeah, but then there is also a certain amount of, I would say, a certain amount of faith that is required when you start. There is certain amount, because moment you say everything is going to happen, I think there is a sense of I-ness that is increasing. I feel as if I'm in control, while reality is not so. The ahamkar starts raising if we think. So there has to be a balance. So if it is the search for the self, the aham akar, as Guruji broke down the word ahamkar as not as ego, but the I-ness. So if we're looking at it in that perspective, I think, you know, it is a blend of both. But it definitely is not a man-made religious practice. You know, it teaches us to follow the path of dharma. It teaches us to do what we are supposed to do, not what we are expected to do, not what somebody, you know, if somebody is,
so you're saying we are going beyond conditioning, social conditioning, difficulties, and we are trying to step into a world of free thinking, where one can decide also for oneself what path, because today decision making is a very difficult story for most of our youth.
But isn't yoga about viveka khyati, discriminative intelligence? So when you start with your practice of asanas, and if you are very, very focused on how you are doing, you start developing discrimination on your physical body, which extends to your mind. And therefore you get clarity of thought. So if you have clarity of thought, you have clarity of decision making.
So viveka will appear on its own.
Yeah, so you don't have to try, you just do it. And these things just reveal themselves. So what happens is you start, you know, the level of expectations, you start living in the present. So, although we are talking of the future, what I've learned from Guruji is yoga keeps you away from the, you know, the past and the future. It helps you live in the present. And if you're in the present, you are not tormented by the past or the anxiety of the future. So then automatically you start taking decisions, and it's not that you're evading decisions. You take a decision and you develop the strength, because certain decisions, maybe down the line, you may feel, well, this was not the right decision. But at that point of time, it seemed, but it also gives you the strength to withstand that decision, what you've taken. Absolutely. So that's why I think it's a very powerful subject.
It's a very holistic practice from what we hear you say. It's amazing what all it can do. Rajvi, I hope that what you have said is going to affect people very much, because you opened a very broad horizon, a very broad horizon. And I think somewhere this idea of talking about religion, and it's so beautifully put. I thank you for this, because I believe this is a one part which we can address our future, because the role it plays in our country is so important, rest of the world notwithstanding, that we can get out of these conditionings and push ourselves beyond and see what kind of a future awaits, especially for these young people who are listening to you today from their university, especially.
In fact, what I would want to say is it is important to practice, because practice is going to transform you.
That
It
says it all.
starts with asanas. It starts with asanas, and through the asanas, you experience all the other limbs of Ashtanga Yoga. We have to be very careful that I don't want people to be just, becoming armchair yogis, and, we talk and people listen and they feel good for another 1 hour and then it's back to it. So it's no amount of talk can transform people. They can inspire people, maybe. They may motivate people that, yoga day, let me do something, maybe they effect. But if they start practicing, then nothing can stop them from continuing. So I think that's the
Fantastic.
very
I think
practice is important.
that is what you've said in a nutshell. Thank you so much. It was
Thank
amazing.
you, Taji.
Thank you for coming in. Thank you for spending your time with us
Thank
and
you.
bringing this very, very prominent, I would say, school of yoga into the forefront by sharing it with our viewers. I'm sure people will benefit.
Hope so.
I hope they'll
Thank
get
you.
in touch with you soon also, but it is
Okay.
important. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you, Ekta ji.